Hello, Church House. This is Daniel Hornsby again, just tuning back in. Just wanted to share another message with you tonight about forgive others, Jesus forgive us, so you should forgive others, and you should love people, and you can't hold a grudge, and that's part of the rules, and like he said, love the Lord above all things with all your heart and all your strength and all your might and all your strength and all your soul. And love your neighbors as you love yourself. And also he said, love your enemies, because he prepares the table for them and for us before thine enemies. You know what I mean? And he loves everybody, so you should love everybody. And you can't hold a grudge, because if you do hold a grudge, it could keep you sick. And the perfect example of that is my dad. My dad, he had real bad schizophrenia all throughout his life. He struggled with it. And not long ago, when I last talked to him, and I said, Dad, well, how's your schizophrenia been? And he said, son, well, I've been healed of it. He said, I've been healed of it. And he said, I have to tell you the testimony. And I was like, okay, cool, because I always love testimonies. I'm down for testimonies. That's why I do this channel. I share testimonies, because building faith in Christ and what Christ can do, because all things are possible to those who believe, and ask, believe, and you shall receive, and all things are possible to those who have got faith the grain size of a mustard seed. And a good example of why you should forgive people and shouldn't hold grudges even against your enemies, like God said so. And because it brings grievance and hardship on your own self if you don't do so. And it's one of the hardest things ever, is to love our enemies, because sometimes there's some really wicked and evil people out there. And a perfect example of this is my dad told me, he said, son, let me tell you this example of how I got healed. And I was like, okay, Dad, I'm down to listen. And he told me, he said, I got healed of it, son. And he said, God kept telling me to forgive my stepdad for beating me all of his life. He said. And he said, I kept refusing. He said, I would not forgive that man. And then God kept putting it on his heart. And he said, no, he kept refusing and kept refusing. And then his sickness, his schizophrenia just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And God kept telling him to forgive that man, and my dad kept praying, Lord, heal my sickness, he said, and he kept on asking God, and God kept telling him to forgive that man. And he said, I did not want to forgive him. He said, but then, son, he said, I got so sick, he said, I couldn't do nothing. He said, I couldn't do anything. And he said, I cried out to God again. He said, God, help me, please help me, Father. And God told him, he said, well, forgive that man. And he said, son, I forgave him for abusing me all them years and being mean to me and beating me all the way up until I turned 18 and got out of my house and got out on my own. And he said, the day I forgave him, son, he said, I never had another schizophrenic problem ever again. And that's just the reason, is you got to forgive your enemies, because it could be holding you from being healed. And love your enemies, like God said, love